Hey everyone, so before we jump into today's episode, I did want to just give a disclaimer, a trigger warning. There is going to be some talk in regards to suicide, and so I did want to just give a disclaimer for anyone that may be a trigger for. Welcome to A Change of Heart podcast. I'm your host, Angel Walston. And in this space, we navigate life together. We ask the hard questions like, what is the truth you haven't told? But most importantly, we grow together. And sometimes that leads to a change of heart. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of A Change of Heart podcast. For anyone, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Hey girl, hey. I'm Angel and I am a mindset coach and a content strategist, and I help millennial women of faith gain clarity in their vision, a strategy that they can implement, and I teach them how to overcome limiting mindset so that they can fulfill their purpose. And I also host this lovely podcast, and today we are going to be talking about really just learning how to take a moment. And because this episode, listen, every once in a while, I like to plan out the episodes, have some talking points. And then sometimes it's like I have something that I feel like is just on me in the moment. I want to talk about it. So it's just kind of like we're winging it. This is one of those episodes. So I don't really know how this is going to go, but I also kind of have a feeling that this may be a little bit on the heavier side. So my goal is, I don't want every single episode to just be like, whoo, that is heavy. But I do want us to really process what we need to, heal where we need to. And so with that being said, if I assume that the episode might be heavy, we're going to do very light, very easy, very simple question of the days because we're going to have enough to think about during the episode, okay? So the question of the day is actually a question that I answered in a Q&A that I did on my YouTube channel, but I thought it was a very lighthearted, simple one, so we're going to answer this one today. And that is, what is your dipping sauce? So what is your favorite dipping sauce? And I recognize that for some people who you may not be like a dipper, so maybe you don't do like chicken nuggets, you don't do French fries or whatever it might be, you can just do either favorite dipping sauce or maybe favorite dressing. So like if you do salads, like let us know what your favorite dressing is, one of the two. So for me, I am not a snob when it comes to dipping sauces. I pretty much can eat almost any of them. The only place that I consistently get the same sauce is Chick-fil-A. So I typically get Polynesian sauce all the time. I love me a good barbecue sauce. I like sweet and sour sauce. I'm not a fan of Chick-fil-A sauce though. I will say that much. But my go-to for Chick-fil-A is definitely Polynesian sauce. But anywhere else, I switch it up. I don't get the same thing all the time. So if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, let me know in the comment section below, what is your go-to dipping sauce, salad dressing, whatever your sauce might be, or you can answer it in my stories on Instagram at Angel C. Walston. And if it's like a specific place that you go where you get your sauce that's may or may not be like known to everyone, let me know like what restaurant, what fast food place, so that we can make the connection there, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. And as I'm talking, I actually don't know what I'm going to name this episode yet. A part of me wants to name this episode, I Am Not Every Woman, It Is Not All in Me, and That Is Okay. But the reason why I say that, I made this post on Facebook and Instagram actually this week, and I'm going to read it to you all because I did get a lot of feedback on that, and I thought that this would be a good conversation for the podcast. So the post says, people can encourage you to keep going and keep pushing forward with good intent, but know that there is strength in pausing too. It's okay to take a moment to process without rush. It's okay to sit with the things that rocked you to your core. It's okay to question. It's okay to not just move on with life as you know it when something impacted life as you knew it in such a significant way. You don't have to get lost or stuck there by any means, but just know that it's okay to pause. It's okay if it takes longer than expected to get over something. Give yourself grace and know that healing can be found in the pause too. And I wanted to talk about this here because I feel like we we live in a society that is so quick to be on to the next thing. So you can have something that happens and literally within 24 hours, there's already something else that has happened. I feel like the media specifically is a really good example of this, because whenever someone is outed, whenever something happens and it makes the news, literally within the next day, 2 to 3 days, they're on to the next thing. Look at the shade room, for example. There's always all of this stuff that is going on, but it's always something else that comes after that. And a lot of times when we are processing life, as we are going through life, it's so easy to have something of significance that happens to you, and it's like you don't really get to take the time to process it. You don't really get to take the time to be present with it, because it's like something happened that like really shook your life, that really changed life as you knew it, yet the world around you is still going, it's still processing, it's still moving, things still have to get done, there's still work to be done. And so it's like, on one hand, we process something that happened. Well, let me not even say we process it, because that's not even true. We have something that happens that impacts us in a significant way, but then we just go on with life as we knew it, as though something has not changed life as we knew it. And I think that that's so important, because when we are encouraging people to keep pushing, to keep going, as I said in the post, a lot of times we say that with good intent. Like a lot of times it's coming from a place of, like, you can do this, this is not going to break you, you are more than a conqueror. We say all of the good Christian cliche things, but what we don't always encourage is for people to break. We don't always encourage people to fall apart. We don't always encourage people to have a moment of release, to have a moment where they just cry, to have a moment where they question, to have a moment where they really just sit with the things that they've been dealing with. And I think that that is just as important, if not even more important, than just encouraging them to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep on going. Because what we end up doing is we unintentionally make people feel like you just have to suck it up. You just got to put on your big girl pants and suck it up and keep going, because life's not going to stop going. And although it's true that life is not going to stop going, we don't realize how we can get to a place where we end up having something that's impacting us that we don't deal with, and it eats us up. It chips away at our spirit. It chips away at us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, because we don't deal with it. And so I want to encourage you all, even as you're having conversations with people, even when you don't know what to say. Sometimes it's just about being present. I know I have a whole podcast, and I know obviously I talk a lot on the podcast, but there are some things that I don't have words for. There's some things that people come to me with where it's like, I don't know what to say. My friends know, like, I'm not the emotional friend. I'm not the friend that's going to necessarily cry with you. I'm not the friend that's necessarily going to be, the one to give you like an overreaction of things. That's typically not in my nature, but I will be present. I can sit with you. I will listen to you. I can get your mind off of something. And sometimes you just need somebody to be present who can just let you talk out how you're feeling, what you're thinking, without them giving you this motivational speech about how you're going to overcome this, you're going to get through this, you just need to keep on pressing, you just need to keep on believing. And we also have to stop making it this thing of, because you are questioning, because you have doubt, because you don't understand, you're hurting, that does not mean that you no longer believe in God. You can question and not really understand his plans or why he allowed something to happen, and that doesn't mean that you don't believe in him. So I'm sharing all of this to say we need to be very mindful of how we are engaging with people when they are experiencing things, whether we know what they're experiencing or not, because it truly can have an impact that can be very detrimental to people's mindsets, that can be detrimental to them being able to move on in a healthy manner. Because we talk about so often, you can't stay here, you can't stay stuck here, don't unpack here, all of those things. we do not talk about the weight of pretending. And listen to me. I actually did an episode that I don't know when it will come out yet. It's called Random Bouts of Sadness. When it does come out, you'll understand why I said I don't know when it will come out yet. But in that episode, I talked about just being in a space of pretending. We do not talk about the weight that comes with putting on and acting like everything is okay when your world is falling apart. We don't talk about what it feels like and the weight of showing up and trying your best to show up when everything around you just feels like it is crumbling, and you are in a space where it's like you're trying to show up in the same way that you have always done, but you need to take the moment. You need to take the moment to grieve. You need to take the moment to acknowledge your disappointment. You need to take the moment to deal with the fact that you're hurting. You need to take the moment to actually like address those things versus just saying like, oh no, I'm strong. Strength is not just reflected in you moving on or keep on going, keep pushing forward. Strength can also be found in you taking the moment. It can also be found in you leaning on someone else. It can also be found in you weeping. There's strength in that too. And so I did want to just kind of walk through some things, and hopefully it can be an encouragement and a help for some of you who are in a space where you've been wrestling with feeling like you just have to keep on going. You just have to keep on pushing. I hope that this gives you permission to allow yourself the grace to take the moment that you need without judgment, without criticism, without feeling like you're letting people down, and without feeling like you shouldn't, because it's okay and there's no shame in that. And so one of the things, as I was talking about earlier, is the weight of pretending. It is so very easy to get to a place where you make commitment to things, where you feel like you're obligated to things, and you want to show up. But we don't realize at times that in us not wanting to let other people down, we let ourselves down in the process, because we are in a position where we're not healthy, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. We are in a space where we are we need to be replenished, and we are truly just pouring from an empty cup. And I think it's so important for us to understand that the weight of pretending is just as detrimental to you holding on to things that you don't deal with, because it puts you in a position where you're trying to get past something, but you're not actually dealing with it. You're not actually moving forward. You're not actually pushing forward as you think you are. You're just pretending. And so now it piles up. It piles up and it piles up. And then it gets to a point where it's like you hit this breaking point where it's like, I can't. I literally just need to completely fall apart. And the weight of that feels so overwhelming. It feels so overwhelming because you've been carrying it for so long. And sometimes you don't even realize how much you've been carrying until you get to the point where you realize, I can't do this anymore. I cannot carry this anymore. And I do think that it's important to have someone who you can talk to, but also sometimes that having someone you can talk to, it might just be a therapist. It may not be your family. It may not be your friends. If you can, absolutely go for that. I encourage that. But just to have a space where you can just break down without judgment, without questions sometimes. Like sometimes you just need a good cry without someone asking you what's wrong. Child, I don't want to talk about it. Sometimes you don't even know. You just want to cry, and that is okay too. The other thing I wanted to talk about is be careful about comparing who has it worse. So what I mean by this is listen, everybody is going through something. Everybody is dealing with something in some form or fashion. Some stuff is heavier than others. Will not deny that. I literally can tell you in the last, I would say, month, I can count on two hands people that I know personally who have lost a loved one. And it literally feels like every time I get on Facebook, somebody else has passed. And it's just like, what is going on? And so you have all of these people who are dealing with grief. You have all of these people who are dealing with just just not even understanding why this happened. How could this happen? You have people who have been laid off from their jobs. You have people who are struggling with sending their kids back to school because of COVID. You have people who are dying from COVID. You have people whose family members have chronic illness. There's literally like a list of things that are happening, things that people are dealing with. And the reason why I say be careful about comparing who has it worse is because when you need to take a moment, it can be difficult for you to do that because you may feel like, well, what I'm experiencing in comparison to someone else, it doesn't seem like it's as bad. So I feel like I need to continue to show up and be present and do everything that I can and support them because what I'm dealing with right now isn't that bad. And the reason why I share that is because I felt like that, to be honest. As I was looking at what everybody else was going through, I realized, like, in comparison, like, I'm not experiencing grief. In comparison, I'm not experiencing what people that I know close to me, what they're going through. But in the same breath, it's like I have something that I'm dealing with that I'm experiencing as well. And I know that although I'm not experiencing the level of hurt or the level of disappointment, the level of grief, the level of pain as they are, I know that I also don't have the capacity to show up emotionally and mentally in the way that I would in any other circumstance. And there was a part of me that was still trying to do that and be that, knowing that I didn't have the capacity myself at a time. And one of my best friends, she actually said, she gave such a great analogy of this. She said, so consider it like this. When you are trying to show up for someone, when you're in a space where you can't really show up for yourself, it's similar to you trying to drive from Virginia to California on an empty tank. You ain't gonna get very far, and you're gonna eventually have to pull over because you weren't prepared to get to the destination that you needed to, because you're trying to help someone else, you're trying to be of a support to someone else with good intent, right, as a good friend, but you also don't have it to give. And so you got to make sure that your tank is filled before you can try and get somebody else to where they're trying to go. And so I bring that up because I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to take a moment for our stuff because we get focused on comparing, well, what I'm dealing with in comparison to someone else's. It's not that bad. And it's not about comparing. It's allowing yourself to be replenished, allowing yourself to be restored. So when you are able to support, when you are able to encourage that person, you can do so in a way that doesn't still leave you at a detriment as well. The next thing I want to talk about, and child, honey, this is for me. It is breaking the savior complex. And I'm actually going to play a clip. This is by Pastor LeBryant Friend. I listened to this back in June, and I knew that I wanted to incorporate this in some form or fashion in the podcast this season. And once I started thinking about this, I was like, this will be perfect. So I'm going to play this clip. I think it's about 3 minutes, but trust me, it's worth listening to.
How many of y'all have gave people yeses too quick? You know, you've told them, of course I'll do it. I'll make a way. I'll find time. Da 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 da. And you overextended yourself out of a false sense of loyalty. And you heard the Holy Spirit saying, you know what, you ain't even got time for that right now. But you felt obligated to do it because you gave them your yes. How many of y'all have overextended yourself? Listen, overextended. A need to be needed. Let me give y'all a very transparent, this happened to me this week. It happened to me this week. This week I was ready to catch a flight. I was ready to leave town to be at the aid and at the comfort of a very dear friend. And I was sitting in our staff meeting. I was processing everything we had to do for the week. I'd already talked to Pastor Vanika about it. She's like, if you feel like you need to go, do whatever you got to do. I'm going to support you. I'm talking about it in our staff meeting. And my team looks at me and they say, we love you and we know you want to be there, but you have a savior complex. You think that you being there is what's going to be the thing that saves them? When really God can do it outside of you. He may just need you to pray for them. And I had to sit in a moment And it's a very real moment. I'm telling you, if you don't have a team that can talk transparently with you, you don't have a team at all. If there's not people around you that can just tell you in a moment that maybe you're a little bit off, or maybe, hey, maybe we need to look at it this way. They say, you want to save them. We know you want to be there, but. And I had to sit in the fact that some of my impulses are directed by and led by not a need to be needed, but a need to ensure that other people don't have to hurt at a level that they would if I wasn't there. There's a part of me that thinks in me there's something that's going to save them. When in all truth and in the reality of it, the best thing that I could do was give space and intercession. There are some things that you do out of a false sense of obligation. What are you doing because you felt obligated, but it's not producing fruit?
Can we talk about it? So it's a lot more that goes with that video as well. I'll put the link to the full video in the description box on my YouTube channel and in the show notes if you're listening to it. But this is so important because some of us, we have a need to be needed. And as a result of that, we have this false sense of obligation that we've been carrying around, that people need me. And for some people, it can intentionally or unintentionally be a pride thing. But for the most part, people who have a servant's heart can unintentionally have a need to be needed. We want to help. We don't want to let people down. We feel as though if I'm there, I can fix it. Us fixers, specifically women, us fixers, we feel like I can fix it if I'm there. I can make it better if I'm there. And we don't realize how much of this savior complex that we have been walking in for years, that we have been carrying, and we don't even recognize either how detrimental that can be. Because on one hand, when you have this need to be needed, it puts people in a position where they need you. And so they may constantly seek you out for things because they know, oh, this is the strong friend. This is the person who's always available. This is the person who always answers. This is the person who always shows up. And we don't even realize at times that we can become a little g God in our friends' lives, in our family lives, even though that's not our intent. I remember a couple of years ago, one of my best friends, she had called me. I don't know if I was at work, whatever reason, I didn't answer the phone. And when I called her back, I was like, hey, I think she called me like twice and I didn't answer either time. And so when I called her back, I'm like, hey, is everything good? And she was saying that, yeah, something was going on with her. She's like, but it was good that you didn't answer because I used that time to pray. And I was like, huh. And something that she said, like in her prayer time, like essentially what God was showing her was that he wanted to be who she came to first with her problems. And we can unintentionally, as we carry this savior complex, we can be the one who fixes the problem. We can be the one who goes and tries to make things right. And the person can look at us to be the one who is the fixer or the one who's fixing or the one who's making things right or making it better when they really need to be turning to God for that. And yes, there are going to be circumstances where you need to show up for people. I'm not saying just be dismissive and don't care. I'm not saying that none whatsoever. But there's a difference in that and having this savior complex where you're coming in to be the one to fix it. I know for myself, I have to be very mindful of this because I'm someone who overcommits. I'm someone who will say yes knowing that my schedule is crazy. I'm someone who will show up when everybody else calls out. Like I've always done that, and I've had to relieve myself of the guilt of knowing that if I don't do it, it will still get done. It's not a matter of it's not going to get done because Angel wasn't there. It's not a matter of it's not going to be fixed or it's not going to go the way that it should because Angel didn't come to save the day. It's not for me to save the day. And so that a part of it is a pride issue that I had to address for myself, that I didn't even recognize it to be a pride issue because that honestly wasn't my heart behind it. But it's still like this thing of like, if I'm not there, it's not going to work or it's not going to be fixed. It's not going to go right. And that is just not true. Okay. Another thing in taking a moment, it's so important to understand is that holding it together is not the only version of strength. You can fall apart. You can cry. You can yell. You can sit in your floor in silence if that's what you need to do. Holding it together is not the only version of strength. And listen, as strong women, specifically strong Black women, that feels so opposite of what we've been taught to believe. It's opposite of what we've seen in our households for the most part. It's opposite of what we've seen from our parents. It's opposite of what we've seen in general, because what we've been told is that strength is you don't cry, you hold your head up, you move on, you figure it out, you go on to the next thing. But holding it together is not the only form of strength. Falling apart is strength as well. Dealing with your stuff, hello somebody, is strength as well. Taking time off is strength as well. There's no shame in it. And sometimes we can feel like, oh, what are people going to think, or it's going to fall on somebody else? Yes, it might. But if that helps you to get healthy, if that helps you to be replenished and restored, there's no shame in that. Another thing that I wanted to share was actually said to me by someone. This was maybe like almost 10 years ago. Like, it's been a while. But I remember I was meeting up with this woman, and one of the things she said to me was that, like, her theme, her, like, whatever for the year was that she was not going to live a rush life. And I was like, huh, interesting. And as we talked about that, is something that I ain't gonna lie, I have not really implemented that in my life per se, but it did put some things into perspective. And I share this particular point because when we think about how we process things, as we think about how we heal, how we deal with things, a lot of us are trying to rush through the process. So we're trying to rush through our failures, we're trying to rush through our grief, we're trying to rush through our disappointments, we're trying to rush through our relationships that didn't work out, we're trying to rush through all of these different things without actually taking the time to address, to acknowledge, to deal with, to figure out what is the cause of this, what is the root of this, what am I running from, what am I running to, what am I avoiding, what habits am I returning to because I'm just trying to get by. And for some of us, living a rush life when it comes to this idea of taking a moment, for some of us, we have not dealt with whatever it is that we need to deal with because we are trying to stay so busy. We are trying to continue our schedule as it has always been, even after we have dealt with something that has changed and impacted our life in such a significant way. And it's very easy to try to rush past something that interrupted peace or that interrupted a place where you were comfortable or where you were experiencing joy. It's very easy to want to rush past that because like this isn't supposed to be here, so let me just like skip over it. But the thing is, you can't just skip over it. You have to process through it. And as you are processing through it, it can be very easy to try to find things, to feel the moments that are silent, to feel the moments that remind you, oh, hey, we need to deal with this. We need to process this. It's very easy to try to rush through those moments so that you can just get past it. There's really something about being in the stillness. There's really something about taking the moment to really just unfold and to take the moment to say, okay, I know this is going to be uncomfortable. I know this is going to be difficult. I know that this is going to possibly put me in a place emotionally that I have been avoiding, but I know it's necessary even though it hurts. I know it's necessary even though I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to replay it. I don't want to have to keep revisiting this, but I know that I need to deal with it. And so I want to encourage you all that as you are in a space where you find yourself being very busy right now, or you find yourself just trying to keep on adding things or people even to your schedule, consider what it is that you are avoiding and consider how long can you really avoid it? Because there's a space that needs to happen, that needs to be created to allow you to really take that moment to really just allow it to just come up and to allow it to really just be released. Last but certainly not least, I do want to really encourage you all as you are taking your moment, even if you choose not to take your moment, to be very careful about the thoughts that you entertain, specifically when you're in a space where you are either processing or choosing not to process. And what I mean by this is we have a lot of things that come up in our mind that we can be very dismissive of, but we don't really like cast it down. We don't really take the time to be like, no, we're not going that path. We're not going down that route. And so I want to share something that is, I want to say that it's personal, but it's not, well, it's personal, but it's not private. I talked about it in my first book, Changed Heart. And I remember, I would say this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, just being in a space where I was just really, really, really struggling, just like emotionally. I was at a job that was really toxic, like to the point that myself and other coworkers were having anxiety attacks about being there. It was just a very unhealthy work environment, and I did go into like a very just like depressed state. And it was just a really, really toxic environment to be in. And I just remember being in a space where I would think I just want to disappear. I remember feeling like that a lot, like I just want to disappear. And at that time, it wasn't a thing of like I didn't want to live anymore or anything like that. But I just constantly remembered feeling like I want to disappear. Like I want to just put like a pause button on life so that I don't have to feel this or experience this anymore. And that lasted honestly a couple of months. Once again, didn't really think too much of it. And then it transitioned to I want to disappear, but I would never do anything to hurt myself. That was like my thinking process. I would never do anything to hurt myself. And then that eventually transitioned to I would never do anything to hurt myself because I wouldn't want to die and people know that I committed suicide. So it wasn't anymore this thought of like, oh, I would never do anything to hurt myself because I want to live. It was more so of I didn't want this particular thing to be associated with my death. And I was a Christian at this time. I was a minister. I was teaching. I was preaching. Like I was doing, still going on life as I know it. This is why I'm encouraging you all to take the moment because I know what it feels like when you don't. And I just remember just having this reoccurring thought of I would never do anything to hurt myself because I wouldn't want to die. And people know that I took my own life. Like I wouldn't want that to be associated with myself. And I remember also wrestling with that for a while, but also never talking to anyone about it, never actually taking the time to like really think about like, what is it that we're actually thinking? What is it that we're actually saying? And I know as I was continuing to have anxiety attacks, like all kinds of things going on, I remember that it started to get to the point where it was I wouldn't do anything to hurt myself because I wouldn't want anyone to think that I took my own life. But what if I could make it seem like it was an accident? And I remember being in that space. And that was the point where it was like, okay, I don't know how we got here, but now I'm starting to entertain that thought. And there are different things that I could do to make it seem like it's an accident. And I know I'll give a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode because I do realize for some people that this could be a trigger for them. So I will make sure to add that disclaimer in the beginning. But I share that because it all started with a very simple thought of I just want to disappear. Like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I just want to hit like a pause button on life. And from there, it went to how could I take my life and make it seem like an accident because I wouldn't want people to think that of me. And the reason why I wanted to do this episode is because when I say take a moment, I know what it feels like to be in a space where you feel like you have obligations. I know what it feels like to be in a space where it feels like you still have to show up, but your world is crushed. I know what it feels like to be in a space where it feels like you can't take a moment. Let me tell you, you absolutely can. And you don't need permission from anybody to take a moment. Everybody may not understand, everyone may not get it, everyone may not approve of it, but at the end of the day, please take the moment. Please take the moment to talk to a therapist. Please take the moment to talk to whoever you need to, because we don't realize how we have all of these different things, these different thoughts that will come to our mind that we allow to go unaddressed because we're stressed out, because we're overwhelmed, because we're not dealing with the things that are dealing with us. And we get to a place where we are now up against the wall with all of our emotions, and it becomes overwhelming. It becomes very heavy. It's exhausting, y'all. It is exhausting to carry that weight, and it's exhausting to carry that weight by yourself. And so I share that because I know what that feels like, and it can feel very lonely, especially when you have those thoughts and you feel like, I can't talk to anybody about this. I can't tell anybody I'm feeling like this. I can't tell anybody that, these are thoughts that I'm having. They're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to be worried. Like, all of these different things just run through your mind, and you feel like you're alone, and that is the worst place to be in. But I want to share something. I remember I was watching an episode of Iyanla Fix My Life, and it was an episode with, I want to say, 5 brothers. And I remember she was saying to one of the boys, I can't remember if he had a suicide attempt or he had talked about contemplating suicide, but she was talking to him and she was like, you don't want to die. You just want the pain to stop. Like, you want to stop hurting. And that is typically what it is for a lot of people. And although what we tend to avoid with taking the moment to process, taking the moment to deal with, we're avoiding the pain just setting in, because we don't want to feel all of the emotions. We don't want to feel the loss. We don't want to feel the hurt. We don't want to feel the weight of it. But feeling it is what gets you through it. And I'm not saying it's going to be a one and done thing. I'm not saying it's going to be an overnight process. I'm not saying that it's going to be the end all fix all by you just sitting with it in one night. It's not. I'm not going to even lie to you. It's going to be a process. This is your permission to take the moment. It does not make you weak. It does not make you a bad Christian. None of that. Take your moment, allow yourself to process, allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to really just be broken and to be okay with that without judgment. And I know for some of you, you feel like, I'm strong, I don't need this, I'm going to keep going. And you feel like, Angel, I'm never going to get to the point of what you were talking about, considering taking my own life. Do you ever think that I thought that I would be at that point more than one time? No, nobody ever thinks like, oh yes, this couple years from now, I'm going to be at that place. Nobody thinks that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to actually be in that place. But the reality is sometimes it does get to that point, and we want to make sure that we correct it, that we address it before it gets to that point, because it doesn't have to get to that point. And so I want to encourage you, if you don't feel comfortable going to a family member, a friend, to talk to them, find a therapist. I know I say it all the time, but I cannot stress enough how important it is to have a therapist that you can talk to, who you can share with, who you can be honest with without judgment, that it is a real safe space. If you are someone who you feel like, hey, I'm not really into the therapy thing right now, I am not a licensed professional in any form or fashion. I promise you I am not. I do not claim to be. However, if you need someone to talk to, feel free to DM me. Feel free to email me. My contact information is always in the show notes. It's always in the description box. I don't want you to feel like you have to go through this alone, especially if you're in a space where you're getting to that dark point, or even if you are there. I want you to know that you don't have to go through that alone, because I know what that feels like, and it's not fun. It is not easy. So if you are in a space where you feel like you have anybody that you can talk to, please feel free to reach out to me. I will make the time. Trust and believe that. Also, I know for some people with your employer, they offer EAP. I'm not sure what that stands for, but it is like a free resource as far as counseling. I know with my job, I want to say we get 4 sessions. I've never used it because I have like my own therapist, but I would strongly encourage that as well. But there's definitely different options. I'll put a crisis hotline in the comment section, in the description box and in the show notes as well, so that you all will have that information. But I just wanted to share that with you all because as the strong friend, as someone who is go, 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 someone who is always being very busy, I know how it is to be in a space where you feel like you can't take a moment and life is happening around you. No one notices, no one, or even, this is even the worst thing. People do notice, but they tell you, gosh, you're so strong. I'm so surprised to see you here, or you're doing this, you're doing that, and not realizing that they are reinforcing behavior that you need to change. So this is me giving you permission to take your moment. This is me giving you also just extending a hand to say, if you need me, I am here for you all. I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that to say it. I am here for you all, to be a support for you all. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to me by email, in my DMs. I will do my best to respond to it. And it all comes directly to me. I don't have a team at the moment, so it's like no one else is checking my emails, DMs, or anything like that for me. So I am the only person that sees it. And I am extremely big on confidentiality. So just wanted to share that. I think that's all I have for you all. So yeah, y'all be blessed. Have a great week and stay encouraged. Please make sure that you are taking care of yourself and make sure that you are being kind to yourself, because we are so quick to be very self-critical at times and to judge ourselves for what we're doing or not doing. Take your moment to heal, process all of that, because it is necessary. I love y'all. I mean it. Until next time, don't forget, be whole, be healed, and be authentic. And make sure you share this with a friend, because I believe someone needs this. Have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning into A Change of Heart podcast. I hope you were encouraged, and please take a moment to share with a girlfriend, and don't forget to download the episode. Lastly, I would love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram at Angel C. Walston and at A Change of Heart podcast. Have an amazing week, and don't forget, be whole, be healed, and be authentic.